Hi guys and welcome to a new video here on my channel. My name is Andy. Thank you for joining me here today in our cozy chaotic corner of the internet. Now if you're new here, we're doing a lot of bookish media fun videos out here, and if this sounds like something you would enjoy, make sure you hit the subscribe button. It really helps. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back. I love you the most. Now in today's video, I was actually thinking about if I could go back before I picked out my first romance to read, what books I would recommend myself. What advice would I give myself? And that's exactly how the whole idea of the video of today started, okay? Basically, I was thinking if I can give myself, the myself from the past that never put her hands on a romance book before, a guide, a list if you want, of books to pick up, what to do, how to approach things, because there is quite a lot out there. What would I give myself? And this is exactly what I built for today's video. Now, we are gonna cover a lot of ground today, from contemporary romance to new adult, across all levels, from beginner to intermediate to expert, what to read, when to level up, and how to know exactly when you're ready for the next year. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, before we get into everything, let's talk a bit about contemporary versus new adult. I know there are a lot of subgenres out there, and things can get a bit confusing with all the aspects there. If this sounds like something you would enjoy, maybe we'll do a deep dive on this topic and talk a bit about all the new subgenres and trying to understand them a bit like a one-on-one guide. Let me know in the comments if this sounds like something fun, and I'm gonna make sure to do it for you. But parentheses aside, comparing here a bit the contemporary with new adult, because those are some of the most encountered subgenres of most romance books nowadays. Now, contemporary romance is basically set in the modern world. I think that's clear for everyone. It's the modern things, no fantasy elements, the emotional core is there, relationships are there, the feelings are clearly there. Now, the difference for new adult is basically the age of the main protagonist, usually between 18 to mid 20s. They're usually they're in college or at the beginning of their career, and everything is way more heated. I think that's where the difference is, that at that age everything is more passionate, the highest are highest, the lowest are lowest, the emotional aspect is way more raw. They usually tend to be spicier than the other ones, simply because of that heat that you have at that age, that tends to dial down a bit later. It's not mandatory, but it's often the case. uh, when the contemporary do tend to be more sweet, more powerful in the long term type of a thing. It's more contemplating the forever aspect of things, when the new adult is very much the heat of the moment type of a thing. I hope that makes sense. That's basically the main difference between it. Okay, now a lot of some genres out there, we know that already. Let's talk a bit about the tropes. Everyone know what the trope is. Some consider that spoiler, some not. That's a different type of discussion, but I'm gonna mention here a few of the most popular ones, just so you know what I'm talking about, in case this is a completely new, brand new information for you. Okay, and those tropes are basically the main idea, so how the story will be portrayed, if you want. That's basically what the trope is. There are some micro tropes, which are basically some powerful moments that represent certain actions, but that's a separate thing. But in big image of tropes, some of the most popular ones you're gonna find are, first is enemies to lovers, which is very much self explanatory. No need to deep dive into that. You're gonna find enemies to lovers a bit more in fantasy, at least the real enemies to lovers. What you find in romance sometimes can be applicable, especially in the mafia and those type of romances, but aside from that, if it's not that level of gravity, I think it's rather adversaries to lovers or something like that. But for the sake of it, I'm just gonna name it enemies to lovers. Then we have forced proximities. Basically, the whole action is triggered by the fact that the main two characters have been forced to be in the same space, forced to spend time together, type of a situation. Then we have fake dating and accidental marriage. Again, self-explanatory. Next, we have grumpy sunshine. Now, if in an FM type of romance, usually the man is the grumpy and the woman is the sunshine, and that's why you have reverse grumpy sunshine, which the roles are reversed. If we have FF or MM or any other combination, then this can go a whole different direction. But as an idea, this is how that the go-to idea is when it comes to the Grumpy Sunshine. Then we have Second Chance, again very much self-explanatory. Then we will have Sports Romance, again a self-explanatory. Forbidden Romance, Slow Burn. Now I will have to be honest with you, the Slow Burn tends to be quite a big umbrella. Honestly, in my opinion, the slow burn actually needs to be built up over time, and it's not. It needs to be that angst that keeps on piling up through the book and just explodes at the end. If it's built up towards the end, to just it just doesn't feel that powerful anymore. It's not that slow burn; it's just insta love it towards the end. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a separate topic. Again, I'm diverging too much. Then we have a morally gray love interest, which again more encounter the romanticies and stuff, but we can always have a morally gray in dark romance as well. Mafia guys type of a situation, but this is more expert territory. And also, speaking of the expert territory, we always have the trauma heavy emotional arcs, okay? But again, we're gonna talk a bit more about this towards the expert tier in our video today. So yeah, that's some of the most popular tropes that you're gonna see out there. Of course, there are a lot more where we can talk about those all day. But just a few major guidelines, those would be the main ones that come to mind at the moment. Okay, now let's move to our tier list. Okay, as I was mentioning before, I will split the whole thing into 3 tiers. We're gonna go beginner, intermediate, and expert based on your level of knowledge or expertise when it comes to romance. Okay, and let's just go ahead and start with the beginner level. Now, who is this for? This targets brand new people to the romance genre. Maybe this is your first book ever that you're reading. Maybe this is the first romance book you're ever gonna pick up. Maybe you dipped a bit your toes, but you're not sure how to approach the whole thing, so what to expect. You just need a bit more information there. Maybe you've read other genres your whole life. Maybe you read fantasy or thrillers or sci-fi or whatever you are reading, and you just want to see what's all the romance about, what all the book to girlies are talking about, they're obsessing over, and you just want to see a bit of that side of the spectrum as well. And that's our target audience for our beginner tier. Then the hit level, we're gonna keep it to low to medium. Of course, there are a lot of good romance books out there that don't have any hit, don't have any spice at all, and if that's more your tier, then nonetheless go towards that. You don't have to read spice if you're not enjoying it, and don't think that just because you don't enjoy spice you cannot enjoy a good romance book. Those are not mutually exclusive. It's true that a lot of romance books have that element more or less predominant according to the author and the book and everything like that, but there are a lot of good ones out there that don't have any spice. So if that's more your thing, go for that one, no problem whatsoever. And then we're gonna tier the emotional damage. And for the emotional damage, we're gonna keep it moderate. We still need a bit of emotional damage because that's gonna drive the story. That's usually the case for romances. And without that, we're gonna feel like we're just spending a day with them doing nothing, which may be again cute, but we do want something to drive the story, to move us. We do want to feel something here. That's the point of all romance at the end of the day. So those will be like the main categories here. Now, when it comes to a few recommendations, if you want a good laugh, then I will recommend you The Deal by Elle Kennedy. If you want a good cry, I will recommend It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. If you want a sports romance, then I will clearly direct you to Mile High by Tomforde, which is the first book in the Windy City series. If you want more of a weekend chill type of a read, then Emily Henry is your gal, and especially people who meet on vacation, amazing book. If you want, for example, something fun and fast, then go with Tessa Bailey's Fangirl Down. It combines a bit of sports and everything. It's exactly what you need. Okay, so yeah, basically authors to start with if you're a beginner that I would recommend here would be Lissom 40. We'll have Emily Henry, Elle Kennedy, we have Tessa Bailey, Colleen Hoover. Those would be some of the lightest picks in the pool. Okay, now that out of the way, let's move to the intermediate level. Now, who is this for? Okay, these are for the girls that already read a book or two, already dipped their toes into the spice, already know a bit the tropes, the higher stakes and everything. You want that a next step. You maybe want a bit of a spicier content, maybe want a bit of a more heavier emotional arc. And that's what the target audience is for the intermediate tier, okay? When it comes to the hit, those will be some medium to high type of overreads, okay? And for the emotional damage, we're gonna keep it quite significant. We're not gonna go overboard, but it's gonna be a bit more intense than we've been used to until now, okay? What's gonna change at this level? It's basically the complexity of everything. We're gonna have more complex trauma, we're gonna have more complex background for our characters. uh we may see the first morally gray type of characters that will gonna appear here, and the relationship will gonna be a bit harder to root for before they click, you know. Okay, now moving to the recommendations. The first one that's gonna be on my list here will be Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. Okay, this is gonna be messy, it's gonna be emotionally brutal. The hit will be way higher than it ends with us from the beginner tier. Okay, next one we're gonna have The Right Move from list on 40. This will be some slow burn. We're gonna introduce some new tropes here, and the slow burns has some really emotional depth, and that's gonna be quite amazing here. Then we're gonna have another option by list on 40. You're gonna see a lot of them fall into this intermediate tier. We're gonna have Play Along, for example. That's another very good option. It's spicier, so keep that in mind. And the dynamic is a bit more complex. Then we have In Her Own League, which is her most recent book, and that's a workplace forbidden type of a romance. And emotional situations are a bit more layered here. You get a lot of POVs, a lot of changes. You're gonna see exactly a bit of a different experience. Then we have The Mistake from Elle Kennedy, for example, where we're a bit stepping up from the deal. So the deal was like the appetizer, and now we're digging our toes into the main course. You know, this is the first course. You know, the soup before the main course. That's exactly where the mistake is hearing. Another option here would be Reminders of Him, for example, by Colleen Hoover. Now the spice is again quite minimal, but the themes here are heavier. There's a lot of grief-driven plot here. So, yeah, what's different here is that we're gonna actually start to look if we have trigger warnings. So if for the beginner level, the there are often no trigger warnings or barely any. For the intermediate, we're actually gonna check that list, girl, and we're gonna make sure that we are all aligned when it comes to that, because we're gonna start to see those heavy topics approach in a more powerful way. And if it's something that triggers you, it might just ruin the whole experience for you. So we're gonna start to check that list from now on, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. Glad we agree here. So yeah, as to wrap up some authors here to explore. Listen for the most of her books fall into this category. Colleen Hoover has some darker picks, as I was mentioning. She's very much in between the beginner intermediate, so it's very much a safe space here. Then we have also Elle Kennedy. So that's pretty much the era in which we're gonna operate with the intermediate here. Okay. Now we're gonna move to the next level, which is expert. Now, if you got to this point, girl, you're already out there. You're already quite experienced. You already know the genre very well. You know exactly what you're getting yourself into. You want unconditional storytelling. You are morally great, complex telling. You want darker themes and emotional arcs, and everything is a whole different level. You might even start to read that trigger warning looks like a shopping cart. For some of us out there, not gonna point any fingers. We might just do that as a shopping list. But again, make sure you read that if you have any specific topic that triggers you. I still recommend you clearly do that. If not, well, then you do you. Okay, approach it however you want. Then on the heat, boy, things will get heated in this tier. Okay. We're gonna get to some very spicy territory. You might need some ice to cool it down. Just saying. So yeah, that's quite where we are. Then when it comes to emotional damage, this will be severe. So this will destroy you, will break you apart and put you back together best way possible. That's the vibe we're going for here. Okay. Now I will have to warn you: proceed with full awareness, full caution. enter at your own risk type of situation. What's here is not gonna be for the faint of heart. Things that will change here is that the trauma will actually central, front and center. We're gonna hit you in the head with it, and just make sure you will never be the same afterwards. Basically, it's not gonna be very much of a side thing or a background thing. The trauma now is gonna be very much up front and out there. The love interest will be genuinely difficult at this stage. Things will no longer be easy peasy, cozy romance type of. Our main characters will actually have to fight their ass off to just stick together or remain with that love or gain that love or whatever situation is going on there. So that's very much for you to keep in mind here. We're gonna approach again some tropes that are more difficult, some that will keep you on your toes up to the end of the book. And also, some side note here, not all of the books may have a happy ending, and that maybe this that might destroy you to a whole different level. You at this point you may have not experienced any romance book that's not a happy ever after. This is the tier in which that case may very well happen. So if you're a happy ever after girly, proceed with caution. Read the trigger warning list and make sure you inform yourself before digging your toes into this. But if you acknowledge everything that we said so far, let's talk about a few recommendations, okay? Colleen Hoover, as I mentioned, is very much a beginner to intermediate, but she does have one book that I would recommend for a more expert level, and that's Verity. I believe it's the only thriller that she wrote, or one of the few ones. And if you read a lot of her books, you're gonna see this is a completely different experience than the others. Not necessarily in the romance department, though we do have a romantic arc, a romance plot here. It's more in the psychological and dark type of a thing. We have some spice, not all over the place. As I mentioned, this is heavier in the psychological dark area. But aside from that, the rest are not that hardcore, at least from what I read so far. So this will be the only one that would be quite there in the expert level. Okay. Now, another very good example here will be Binding and Keeping 13. Now, those motherfuckers are long as fuck. We're talking over 1,000 pages, those two books together. They're gonna be raw, they're gonna be messy, deeply emotional, extremely traumatizing. But the payoff, oh, the payoff is gonna be so intense. It's gonna be just absolutely mind boggling. It's gonna be something that you've never read before and you might never read again. So, mm, premium literature at its peak, if you want here. Then some other example, we'll have The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez. Now, this is more of an emotional gut punch, okay? It's very much between the intermediate and expert, but the grief and the love intertwined and everything will keep it somewhere in the barrier. I think you could do this after a bit accustomed to the intermediate as well, or at the beginning of expert. I think it will feel very comfortable in either or. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for the beginner, simply because, as I was mentioning, the angst and everything, it's a bit heavier. But aside from that, be my guest here. Then another option that I could recommend here is actually Tequila Songbird, and that's by M. Rhiannon. Now, this is very much a darkish contemporary story. It's not too heavy, but the dynamics are quite complex in the book, and the way everything is portrayed, the layers and everything, it's a bit different than what you've read before. Again, it's not gonna scar you for life. It's not that type of a read, but it's way more complex than any other that we've read before. So again, keep that in mind before going. Okay, so yeah, in the expert tier, some of the authors, as we mentioned, that I would recommend would be first Chloe Walsh. It's a very good one here. Abby Jimenez. We have M. Rhiannon, Colleen Hoover. Those are the areas I would recommend. So yeah, that's kind of the expert tier on our video here. Okay, moving on. Now, how to know when to level up? And there are three very basic, very important things to keep in mind to guide you here. Okay, we're not gonna complicate this. We're gonna keep it short and simple. Okay, first, the beginner tier and the beginner picks feel a bit too easy or a bit too light. Okay, that's our first sign. Then you are actively seeking more. You want a bit heavier tropes, you want a bit something else. That's our second sign. And the third sign here would be that you finished a book and maybe you wanted more emotional chaos, you wanted more drama, more impact. I think that's the major one. Okay, and that's when you feel those things, one of them or all three of them, that's your clear sign to move to the next year, that you're ready. Now, don't get me wrong, maybe you're an expert and you just want to lay low, you just want a cozy read, then you're gonna go back to the beginner ones. That's no problem. You can go back and forth as many times as you want. The important thing here is to know how to progressively move through them so you won't get a bad experience at the end of the day. Now, of course, take this with a pinch of salt. Everything is very much a guideline. If you just need a bullet park guideline on how to approach this is the best way of doing things. Otherwise, you do you approach this how you want. If you want something powerful from the get-go, go for it, girl. You have absolutely no regrets. You're gonna love it. No problem. But yeah, if you want the guidance, as I was mentioning, this is how I would recommend you do things if you just getting started with everything. Okay. And with that being said, we can wrap up to this video here. If you're still with me, kisses, thank you so much for choosing to spend the day with me. I love you the most. I cannot wait to hear all your thoughts in the comment down below. And until next time we meet you guys, stay cozy in your chaos. Bye!